You ever open the fridge, not for food, but just to see if something in your life is still working? That's what I did. I stood there at 2:17 a.m. wearing a sweater I hadn't washed in a week, staring into that cold little box of expired ketchup and unopened oat milk. The light was on. Everything else felt dead. My name's Everett. Yeah, I know, not exactly a name people remember. But that's sort of how my whole life has gone. I'm the guy who shows up on time, offers to carry the extra grocery bag, listens more than he talks. And for almost 10 years I thought that made me the kind of husband worth keeping. My wife's name is Tessa. She used to laugh at my lame attempts to fix our leaky faucet. Said she liked my quiet hands. I didn't even know what that meant until the day she stopped holding them. We weren't fighting. We weren't distant. At least not in the way people describe when things fall apart. We had dinner together every night. Watched crime dramas under the same old blanket. Shared passwords, playlists, Spotify Premium. She even kissed my forehead before bed, that dumb little forehead kiss that made me feel 5 years old in the best way possible. But people don't always cheat because they're unhappy. Sometimes they cheat because they're curious. Or bored. Or because the version of themselves they pretend to be with someone else feels more exciting than the version they are with you. And sometimes they cheat because they can. It happened on a Thursday. That's how ordinary the end of everything was. I was supposed to be working late, but my client canceled. I didn't text her to say I was coming home early, no reason to. I wanted to surprise her. I thought it would be sweet. Instead, I surprised myself. She wasn't home when I got there. I thought she might have gone out for sushi with her sister. She does that. I took off my shoes, fed our ancient cat, Franklin, and picked up her phone from the kitchen table to silence it. It kept buzzing. It was open. Not locked. Again, no reason to be suspicious. Until I saw the name. Zeke. That wasn't her sister. And then I tapped. What I read didn't make me angry. It made me cold. Like something cracked behind my ribs and let all the warmth leak out, slow and silent. It wasn't just the words, though those were bad enough. It was the tone. The emojis. The familiarity. The way she wrote baby with 3 Ys. The way she called him my escape. I was never her escape. I was her anchor. That's when I stopped breathing for a second. I scrolled. I scrolled way too far. Back to messages while we were on vacation in Asheville. Back to the night we celebrated my birthday with homemade cake. The same night she told me, I'm lucky I married you. Apparently, she had texted him 5 minutes later, I wish I was falling asleep next to you instead. I didn't scream. I didn't break the phone. I didn't text her, call her, or leave a voicemail saying I knew. I just grabbed my coat and left. I left our house, our wedding photo on the mantle, our half-washed dishes in the sink. I walked 5 miles without thinking. I didn't take my car. I didn't even lock the front door. I didn't block her. I didn't erase her. I didn't post some dramatic status or tell her mom. I simply disappeared from her world. And for 2 days I slept on the floor of my old high school friend's recording studio. There were no beds. Just bass lines and instrument cables. I laid there, eyes open, thinking about the woman I married and the stranger who had replaced her. She texted. She even called once. But I said nothing. Silence felt cleaner than rage. Then on the 3rd night, I came home. And she was there. Sitting on the porch, looking like a statue from a dream I didn't want to remember. She didn't say my name. She didn't ask what I saw. She only whispered, you weren't supposed to find out. And I didn't answer. I just dropped to the ground, leaned against the doorframe and cried. Not because I missed her, but because I had no idea what to do with the version of me she left behind. She sat in silence. Not the kind that begs to be broken, the kind that knows it already said too much. Tessa didn't even try to touch me. Her knees were pulled up, arms wrapped around them, like she was trying to fold herself into nothing. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I just sat there, knees weak, the cold of the brick porch soaking into my back as the tears blurred everything I didn't want to feel. I always thought in moments like these, a person would scream. Demand answers. Throw things. But it turns out betrayal has a quieter sound. It's the absence of breath in your chest. It's the way time slows down when the world you trusted collapses without noise. Everett, she finally said. Just my name. Like that would undo what she'd done. I wiped my face with my sleeve, still not looking at her. I don't know why I spoke at all, but the words came out like cracked glass. How long? She didn't answer at first. Then came the softest truth I'd ever heard, 6 months. That hit harder than if she'd slapped me. 6 months. While I was writing her little notes on the bathroom mirror. While I was booking us a weekend getaway. While I was refilling her car with gas so she wouldn't have to. She was lying in someone else's bed, sending messages that didn't belong in our marriage. My stomach turned. And what broke me even more was that she didn't cry. She wasn't defensive. She didn't beg. She just sat there like someone who had already prepared herself to lose everything. I stood up, shaky. "I need you to go," I said, voice dry. "I need to be alone in a house that used to feel like mine." She nodded, got up, and left without asking if I meant it. The door clicked shut behind her like the final note in a song I never wanted to hear again. That night, I walked into the bedroom and stood at the edge of the bed for 15 minutes. Just staring. The pillows. The blanket. The space where her hair used to fall across my chest in the mornings. I sat on the edge of the mattress and didn't lie down. I couldn't. It felt like betrayal had seeped into the fabric, like it would cling to my skin if I touched it. Instead, I wandered to the kitchen. Poured orange juice into a coffee mug because I couldn't find the energy to wash a glass. Then I opened the drawer we kept our passports in. For no reason, really. Just looking. Searching for something solid. And that's when I found the receipts. I don't know why she kept them. Maybe she thought I'd never look. But there they were, tucked under an old cable bill. Hotel rooms. Restaurants in neighborhoods we never went to. A boutique in a city we hadn't visited in years. And one from a jewelry store. A bracelet. Gold. Engraved. It wasn't for me. I stared at the receipt like it was proof I had been erased and replaced. Like somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as the man she loved and started seeing me as just the guy who did the dishes. I sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up. And when it did, I did something I didn't expect. I messaged her. Just 2 words. "YM." I didn't want details. I didn't need the affair scrapbook. I just wanted to understand what made this stranger more than me. Smarter? Funnier? Better in bed? Or was it simpler than that? Was he just new? She took an hour to reply. "Because he saw me in a way you stopped seeing me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask, "How do you cheat on someone who would die just to keep you warm?" But I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the bathroom, looked at my reflection. And for the first time, I didn't recognize the man staring back. He looked tired. Not just from the lack of sleep. He looked tired of loving someone who stopped loving him back. The morning after she left, the house was louder than it should have been. Not because of sound, but because of absence. The chair she always curled up and felt like it was holding its breath. Her mug still sat in the sink, stained with the outline of lipstick that I now realized wasn't always mine to kiss. I should have thrown it out. I didn't. I just stared at it like it could give me answers. I didn't sleep. I didn't shower. I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I called in and mumbled something about being sick. It wasn't a lie. I just didn't tell them what kind of sick. Around 11 a.m. a knock came at the door. I froze. My heart punched my ribs like it wanted to escape before I opened it. I thought it was her. Thought she'd come back again to explain, to cry, maybe even to apologize. It wasn't her. It was the mailman. He handed me a thick envelope. No return address. Just my name, Everett Mullen, printed in what looked like careful, deliberate handwriting. The kind of writing you use when you're trying to make sure someone reads every word. Inside was a letter. And photos. At first, I thought it was from Tessa. Maybe some strange confession or half-baked way to justify everything. But then I saw the name at the bottom of the first page. Mallory R. I had no idea who that was. I read the letter 3 times before I fully understood what I was holding. Mallory was or had been married to Zeke. Yes, that's Zeke. The man from the chats. The other half of my wife's betrayal. Her letter didn't accuse. It informed. She told me she'd found out about the affair weeks ago. That she'd been tracking it. Not digitally, physically. Mallory had followed them twice. Once to a hotel 2 towns over. Once to a lake house rental booked under a fake name. She attached the receipts. Screenshots. A timeline. And then she included the photos. I won't describe them in detail, but let's just say they weren't blurry and they weren't innocent. The images were framed through a windshield probably taken from her car. Tessa was laughing in one. Holding a bottle of wine in another. Wearing my hoodie in a third. My breath caught. That hoodie was a birthday gift from her. I kept reading and the words got colder. Mallory wrote that she wasn't sending the package to hurt me. She was sending it because she understood. Because she too had spent nights pretending not to notice the late returns, the hidden smiles, the distant eyes. At the end of her letter, she wrote something that's still tattooed into my brain. You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them closure. But you owe yourself a future that doesn't smell like their lies. I sat on the floor with that letter for over an hour. That was when something broke inside me. Not in a violent way, but in the way old bridges collapse. Quietly. From underneath. And yet, instead of burning everything, I did something I now regret more than anything. I called her. My wife. Tessa. And when she answered, all I said was, he has a wife. And she knows everything. The silence that followed felt endless. Then, softly, Tessa whispered, Everett, please, don't make this uglier than it already is. Uglier? That's when I realized something. She didn't feel guilt. She felt inconvenienced. I hung up without another word. Later that day, I stood in the shower, fully clothed, as hot water hit my face and soaked through the letter I hadn't realized I was still holding. It was the first time in years that I didn't feel like her husband. And for the first time ever, I didn't want to be. That night I couldn't bring myself to sleep in her bed. I laid out a blanket on the floor of the spare room, the one we used to call the guest room, even though no guest had ever slept in it. It was mostly storage. Broken lamps, unopened wedding gifts, things we said we'd deal with later. Funny how betrayal rearranges the furniture of your life. Suddenly the spare room felt like a safe house. The bedroom? A war zone. The kitchen? Evidence storage. Every room I walked through felt like it knew what she'd done and worse, what she'd felt while doing it. I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mallory's photos, her letter, her calm courage. What must it have taken to send something like that to a stranger? What must it have cost her? I couldn't imagine. Until I got the voicemail. It happened the next afternoon. I'd gone to the grocery store because I was out of everything, even toilet paper. Every aisle felt like a landmine of memories. Tessa loved granola bars with dark chocolate. She'd always throw extra lemons in the cart. I walked past the wine section and nearly collapsed. We had a routine. She picked the label. I pretended to guess whether it was dry or not. By the time I made it to checkout, I was sweating like I'd run a marathon. Not from panic. From heartbreak. Then my phone buzzed. One new voicemail. From a number I didn't recognize. I stepped out to the parking lot, sat in my car, and hit play. It was a man's voice. Tired. Nervous. Older than I expected. And what he said didn't just shake me. It rewrote the entire past 3 weeks of my life. Hey Everett, you don't know me. My name is Gray. I'm Tessa's father. That alone made me grip the steering wheel like I was bracing for an earthquake. She never spoke about him. Said he left when she was a teenager and that she didn't care to keep in touch. I don't know what you've been told about me, but I've been trying to reach her for months. I only found your number because it was tied to the house address I still had. Look, I don't want to stir anything up, I need you to know something. Zeke? The man she's with? He's not a stranger to her. He's someone from the past. A long past. He's not just some fling. He was there when things got bad. When she ran away. I don't know what he means to her now, but back then. The message cut off. A sharp beep. Like someone hung up mid-confession. I sat there stunned. What did he mean he was there when things got bad? What kind of past were we talking about? Abuse? Debt? Drugs? Trauma? She never told me any of this. I redialed the number. It rang twice, then voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I just sat there as the gears in my head began spinning in directions I never anticipated. Could it be that she wasn't just cheating for fun or thrill? Was it deeper? Darker? Back home, I searched everything I could. I found public records, buried articles, a mugshot from 10 years ago, Zeke's. I couldn't believe it. He had been arrested for possession, resisting arrest, and something vague about a domestic situation. No charges stuck, but it was something. I printed the photo out and pinned it to the corkboard we used for holiday cards. I stared at it like he might speak. Like he might explain to me what the hell my wife was doing tied to a man like that. Later that evening, I opened our wedding album. For the first time in years. And I noticed something I'd never seen before. In one of the group shots, at the back of the venue stood a man in sunglasses, arms crossed, watching from a distance. Zeke. He was at our wedding. I slammed the book shut. Suddenly, it all felt orchestrated. Like I was the one who wandered onto their stage. Not the other way around. This wasn't just cheating anymore. This was a story with a prologue I never got to read. It took me 2 days to find him. Gray, Tessa's father, had left me no address. Just a name and a disconnected number that went to voicemail with no option to call back. But I wasn't going to let that be the end. Something about his message had cracked open a part of me I didn't even know was still alive. Curiosity, yes. But also fear. A kind of fear I couldn't ignore, like I was standing in a house that was quietly filling with smoke. So I started digging. I called an old friend of mine, Nate, who used to do freelance work for a local paper. I told him I needed help finding someone and that it wasn't for a story. It was for something more personal. Nate owed me a favor, and within a few hours he sent me a short email with a link and a single line of text. If this is the guy, he's living in Belhaven. Try the trailer off Route 9. Belhaven was a place that didn't show up on most maps. An hour out from the city. Mostly farmland, rusted signage, and people who didn't like strangers knocking on their doors. But I went anyway. I drove in silence, no music, no podcast, just my thoughts unraveling mile by mile. I thought about the man in the sunglasses at my wedding. I thought about the missing years Tessa never wanted to talk about. And I thought about how I might be walking into a truth worse than infidelity. When I reached the trailer, it was late afternoon. A battered pickup sat outside. Paint chipped. Tires bald. There was a wind chime made out of silverware hanging from the porch, and the sound it made gave me chills. Not because it was eerie, because it was familiar. I'd heard it once, years ago, when I dropped Tessa off to meet a family friend she didn't want to explain. I stepped onto the porch, knocked once, and waited. The door creaked open half an inch. Yeah? A raspy voice called through the crack. Gray. I asked. I'm Everett. Tessa's he. The door opened fully before I could finish. He looked older than I expected. Thinner but solid in the shoulders. His eyes darted behind me like he was expecting trouble to follow. She sent you? He asked. No. She doesn't even know I heard your voicemail. He gestured for me to come inside, then closed the door behind us without saying a word. The trailer smelled like old tobacco, coffee grounds, and something metallic like tools. On the table was a half-finished puzzle, a pack of cigarettes, and a dog-eared copy of Mice and Men. Gray poured himself a cup of black coffee and poured me one too without asking. Then he sat across from me. I left when she was 14, he said. That's the part she probably told you. I nodded. She tell you why? I shook my head. She doesn't know. The room went still. I was a mess back then. Not just the drinking. I owed the wrong people. Got mixed up in things. When I left, it was to protect her. Her and her mother. I figured it was better for them if I disappeared. What about Zeke? I asked. His jaw tensed. He was never supposed to come back into her life. He was trouble. Always was. He knew things about me, things I owed. And when I left, he stayed behind. Stayed behind where? Gray looked up at me, eyes sharp. With her. I blinked. What? He was 17. She was 13. He wasn't just some kid with a crush. He watched her. Followed her. I called the cops once and they said she was just making things up. That he was harmless. But he wasn't? No, Gray said flatly. He was patient. He waited. My stomach twisted. You're saying? I'm saying, Gray interrupted, that the reason Tessa never talks about those years is because she spent most of them trying to erase herself. The silence after that was the heaviest thing I've ever felt. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. She ran away when she was 16, he continued. No note. No word. I found out later she'd been couch hopping. Then one day she came back. Cleaned herself up. Moved to the city. Never talked about it again. I sat there stunned. All this time I thought I knew the woman I married. But this wasn't just a secret. This was a buried life. Why are you telling me this now? I finally asked. Gray stared at his cup. Because if she's with him again, it means she's trying to go backward. And people don't go backward unless something's breaking. I drove home in silence again, but it was a different silence now. Not grief, not even betrayal. It was dread. Because suddenly this wasn't just about my wife cheating. It was about her returning. To something broken. To someone dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. I barely moved. I sat in the same chair in the kitchen, lights off, holding the half-empty mug of coffee Gray had poured me like it was a relic from another world. What he told me wasn't just disturbing, it redefined my entire marriage. The silence between Tessa and me wasn't peaceful like I once believed. It was protective. Shielding me from a version of her life I had no idea I was standing on top of. I couldn't stop picturing her at 16. Scared. Alone. Running. Not from rebellion or boredom like she always joked, but from him. Zeke wasn't just a stranger. He was her shadow. And she went back to him. Willingly or not, I didn't know yet. But I had to understand why. There was only one person left to ask. Her mother. I had met Linda exactly 6 times in 10 years. She was polite but distant. The kind of woman who smiled too wide at dinner parties and always left early without explaining why. Tessa once told me they weren't close, but now I was starting to wonder if that was just another wall in a very carefully constructed maze. I showed up on her doorstep at 8 a.m. on a Sunday. The neighborhood was quiet. Trees unmoving. Curtains still drawn. It felt like a moment frozen in time, like the world was holding its breath for what I was about to ask. She opened the door in a robe, surprised but not annoyed. Her eyes clocked everything, my appearance, my expression, the tension in my jaw. She didn't say hello. She said, "What happened?" I stood there, unsure how to start. Then I just said it. "She's back with him." I didn't even say his name. She didn't need it. Her hand went to her mouth, but no sound came out. Just the kind of gasp you make when a nightmare you had years ago walks through your front door in daylight. "Come inside," she said quietly. The house smelled like lavender and disinfectant. There were floral decorations everywhere, but no photos. Not one. That struck me. She poured me tea, sat across from me in silence. Then she asked, "Did she tell you anything?" "Nothing," I said. "Gray did." She stiffened. "You saw him. He called me. Left a voicemail. I found him." Her shoulders dropped and she closed her eyes like someone reliving a moment they'd spent years trying to forget. "She was 13, she said softly. I wasn't paying attention. I was working double shifts, always trying to prove I could raise her on my own after Gray left. She was quiet. Too quiet. And he was charming." "Zeke," I said. She nodded. "He used to hang around the bus stop, help her with schoolwork. Gave her his hoodie once, she wore it for weeks. I thought it was innocent. Just an older kid being nice." She stared at the table for a long time. Then one night, she came home with bruises on her back. Said she fell. But the look in her eyes. I knew. I just knew. I called the police. Nothing happened. Said there wasn't enough evidence. He had friends. Older guys. All of them slippery. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would she go back to him?" Her hand shook slightly as she lifted the teacup. "She never really left him," she said. "She left the memories, not the bond. When someone gets into your head that early, they don't just vanish. Sometimes the pain gets mixed up with comfort. Sometimes the prison starts feeling like home." I felt sick. "She said she loved me," I whispered. "She married me. She built a life with me." Linda looked at me with eyes full of pity and wisdom. "She probably did love you. But love isn't the same thing as healing." I wanted to leave. I wanted to stay. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. Then she said something I didn't expect. She tried to contact him last year. I found the emails. She never sent them. But she wrote them. Over and over. Like she was reaching for something she couldn't explain. I swallowed hard. "Does she know you know?" "No." "She will now." Linda stood up, walked to a drawer and pulled something out. "A key. She's been using my cabin again. The one near Elkridge. If she's not at your place or his, she's probably there." I stared at the key like it was a detonator. "Everett," she said, gently placing it in my palm, "if you go, be ready for answers you won't like." I didn't drive to the cabin right away. I drove around for 2 hours. Aimless. Thoughtless. Pulled into a gas station I didn't need. Bought a bottle of water I didn't drink. Sat in the car watching people live their unshattered lives. A father lifted his kid onto the hood of a car to tie his shoes. A woman laughed while arguing with someone over Bluetooth. The world hadn't changed, only mine had. Then finally I started the drive to Elkridge. It was far enough from the city that cell service cut out halfway there. The road narrowed to gravel, the trees thickened, and I remembered Tessa telling me once, "I like it there because it feels like the world forgets you exist." That line never meant much until now. The cabin looked exactly how I remembered. Modest. Blue shutters. A crooked porch light she always meant to fix. One window slightly ajar. It was early evening, the last rays of sun filtering through the trees, painting shadows across the deck like broken fingers. I parked behind her car. The sight of it, that old blue hatchback we'd shared for years, gave me a jolt. Like bumping into someone you used to love and realizing your heart doesn't know what to do with itself. I walked up, key in hand, and paused at the door. I don't know what I expected to hear. Music? A voice? Maybe even laughter. Instead, I heard silence. Not peaceful silence, thick, suffocating silence. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Immediately, I was hit with the scent of her vanilla lotion, faint citrus shampoo, but beneath it was something unfamiliar. Like dust. Like stale air. Like something had been left open too long. The cabin was clean. Too clean. No dishes in the sink. No blanket on the couch. No food on the counter. And then I noticed something else. There was only one toothbrush in the bathroom. Not two. I checked the drawers. Half empty. Some clothes. A pair of hiking boots. Her journal. Yes, her journal. She always carried it with her. She never let anyone read it. She even used to joke, "If you ever want to know my secrets, don't ask, just steal this." So I did. I opened it. And what I found didn't explain things. It obliterated them. Page after page. Some entries were short. Some were torn out. But the ones that remained? They weren't about Zeke. They were about me. Everett smiles when he thinks I'm not watching. It breaks me. He deserves more than a woman made out of panic and ashes. I want to love him like he loves me. But I keep tasting smoke when he touches me. Zeke was a bruise. Everett is bomb. But I can't feel bomb. I only respond to pain. If I ruin this, it will be because I've confused safety with suffocation. I dropped the journal like it had caught fire in my hands. She didn't hate me. She didn't love him. She didn't know how to love anymore. The door creaked behind me. I spun around. But it wasn't her. It was Zeke. Standing in the doorway like he'd been watching me the whole time. Same smirk. Same slouched stance. Like he owned the air around him. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice calm. I stared at him. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. What did you do to her? I asked. His smile widened just a little. I didn't do anything. She came here on her own. Where is she? Gone, he said, shrugging. For now. I stepped closer. Gone where? He tilted his head, mocking. You really think she tells me everything? You really think you ever knew her at all? I wanted to hit him. I didn't. Instead, I said something I never expected to hear come out of my mouth. I think she's running from both of us. His expression shifted. Just slightly. Then he said something I will never forget. She was mine long before she became your savior fantasy. I clenched my jaw. You don't own people. He laughed softly. Everett, you don't keep someone like Tessa. You survive her. Before I could speak again, he turned and walked out. Got into his truck. Drove off. No confrontation. No threats. Just that lingering sense that he had come here to confirm something. I was left standing in the middle of the cabin. Alone. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed. Because I needed to know if she'd come back. Because I needed to understand if there was still a version of her that remembered who I had been to her before the ghosts started knocking. I stayed in the cabin for 3 days. I didn't plan to. I only meant to stay the night. But I couldn't leave. I wasn't waiting for her, not exactly. I was waiting for the part of myself that felt like it had been scattered across every room she and I ever touched together. I slept on the couch. Read every page of her journal. Cooked eggs and let them go cold. I didn't answer calls. I didn't check email. I sat on the porch and let the silence speak for her. And then, on the 4th night, sometime after sunset, just as the frogs started croaking in the trees and the wind shifted through the pines, I heard the car pull in. I didn't move. She didn't knock. She used her key. When the door opened, she stood in the threshold for a long time, clutching her bag like she wasn't sure if she'd be thrown out or hugged. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in all the years I'd known her, I saw something completely new. Fear. Not of me. Of loss. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her gently, and said nothing. I didn't speak either. We just stood there surrounded by old wood, faded rugs, and all the unsaid things pressing against the walls. Then she finally whispered, I didn't think you'd still be here. I didn't think you'd come back. Her eyes glistened. I wasn't sure if I could. I nodded. But you did. That broke her. She walked toward me, slow and uncertain like I might vanish. And then she collapsed into my arms, sobbing, not the kind of cry that needs comfort, but the kind that begs for permission to fall apart. I'm sorry, she said into my chest. I'm sorry for every version of myself I never let you meet. I thought I could keep my past in a different room. I didn't think you'd ever open that door. I opened it, I said quietly, because I had to. Because I wanted to understand. She pulled back slightly, looked up at me, her eyes searching. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I hated feeling like I didn't exist. She nodded, took a breath, and said something I will never forget. I never left you for him. I left myself. I thought I had to go back to that old place to understand why I kept breaking the good things. But I saw him. And it wasn't love. It was rust. It was dust in the shape of a memory. We sat on the porch that night, wrapped in a blanket. Didn't talk much. Just breathed the same air again, without guilt, without blame. She told me everything. Her childhood. The nights she couldn't sleep without checking every locked door. The time she ran barefoot for 6 blocks because Zeke had shown up outside her work. The reason she always left the bedroom light dimmed because darkness wasn't peaceful for her. I didn't interrupt. I didn't fix. I listened. And for the first time, we didn't feel like husband and wife. We felt like 2 human beings starting from scratch. Over the next few weeks, we went to counseling. Real counseling. Not just reading blog posts or watching TikToks about emotional health. It was awkward. Ugly at times. But it was honest. She didn't ask me to stay. I chose to. And now, 6 months later, we live slower. More intentionally. We still argue. Still have bad days. But now the silence between us means safety, not fear. And sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching, she smiles. Not the kind of smile that hides. The kind that invites. I used to think love was about certainty. Now I know it's about showing up. Even when the past walks through the door. Even when it almost steals the future. And sometimes, if you're willing to listen, even broken people can meet each other again. For the first time.